Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we are exploring some of the things that are going to be competitive potentially in this new meta where Psychic Frog is probably the best thing you can be doing, but that might leave a lot of room for other things we can do. So I'm trying out some blue-green Infect today. This is from a request from a donor who subscribes to my Patreon. They want to see some good old-fashioned blue-green Infect. So what this deck wants to do is put 10 poison counters on our opponent using Infect creatures. So we have Glistener Elf, Blighted Agent, and Inkmoth Nexus. And the way that we're going to put counters on is using this free pump spell Invigorate most of the time. So if we have a forest, we can play this for free. Our opponent gains 3 life. We don't care about our opponent's life total. +4/+4, which is effectively +8/+8 if you're talking about normal levels of pump. If you basically times it by 2 to work out how good it is on an Infect creature. So that's pretty darn good. And then we can just cast a Berserk, and that'll be enough to make this lethal. Alternatively, we can cast Scale Up and an Invigorate, and that is enough to make it lethal as well. We have one Become Immense here that we can use. After we've played a bunch of pump spells later on, we can then delve this and have a really big hit. We also have Noble Hierarch. This allows us to get some Exalted going on our creatures, as well as power out some more spells and let us cast multiple pump spells. And we have an Embiggen. This does quite a lot of pumping when it comes to our creatures, because creature type of this, creature Phyrexian Elf Warrior. So this is a +4/+4. This is an artifact creature Phyrexian Blinkmoth, whatever. So this is going to be +5/+5 on this. So it can do a lot of work, the Embiggen. But I do quite like the Scale Up, just as a make something a 6/4 is a nice way to start things off. We've got 8 counter spells to help us make sure that we get going there. We've got some Brainstorms and a Ponder to try and dig for the pieces we need. And this particular build that we're trying, I've taken it from a recent list I saw and tweaked it slightly for the new meta. But we've got some Legolas' Quick Reflexes to protect our creature. Split Second means it will definitely work as well. But then we have ourselves Royal Treatment. This is a new one. So we gain Hexproof until end of turn, and we get a Royal Roll token, which gives +1/+1 and ward to the creature. So it's like a bit of protection that also ends up being pump and protection further on down the line. And then good old-fashioned Vines of Vastwood. So it's hexproof pretty much when we just cast it, but if we kick it, it's +4/+4 and hexproof. So that's our suite of pump spells. We've also got ourselves a Pendelhaven, which we can pump our 1/1s with, which all of our creatures are here. Hidden in our mana base, we do have one Wasteland, which is something we can try and dig for using things like Brainstorm, but this is also going to be useful when we get to our sideboard. And then we just got some fetch lands, a couple of forests here, and then a bunch of drops for the blue stuff. We are more heavy green, so the reason I wanted to play this particular build is because I like the sort of green heavy count on it. We also have one of Boseiju in there. Sideboard-wise, we have a crop rotation, which basically is going to double the amount of every land in our deck in terms of, you know, having a land that we want to find. So that makes our Wasteland into a 2-of, and then we can obviously Brainstorm looking for the crop rotations. That just makes it a little bit more reliable to do that. We also have the Bojuka Bog and the Karakas we can find with the crop rotation. Then we've got some artifacts taking the form of Force of Vigor and good old-fashioned Seeds of Innocence to really smash things home. We've got ourselves a Veil of Summer to protect us from a little bit of discard and to force some things through sometimes. We've got ourselves Flusterstorm, we've got Hydroblast, we've got Dismember, Grafdigger's Cage, Safe Extraction, you know, all the hits really that you would expect to see that we can kind of tweak our deck around. We have one Dismember in the main as well, which again ends up being more of a sort of pre-sideboarded. You know, we've got a few slots in here like the Wasteland, like the Dismember that we're kind of having as things that we can tweak with the deck when they're not good. We can take them out, obviously we can Brainstorm them away, that sort of jam. So yeah, that's the deck. I'm excited to try some blue-green Infect. I think without people trying to grief away your opening hand like nobody's business, we might be in with a good chance to assemble the right bits and pieces to just smash people down with a good old Glistener Elf. Alright, remember to like and subscribe, and let's start jamming some blue-green Infect. So our opener does have access to one of our threats. It is one of the slightly slower threats, but I think that's still fine. Not every hand is going to have a Glistener Elf. We can try and ponder our way towards some pump spells. This will require us to find our tropical island. We don't have any basic islands in our deck. A Lotus Petal. Alright, we might be having to fire off this Force of Will sooner than I would necessarily like, but we'll see what our opponent is up to. They did mulligan quite aggressively, so we could be seeing some kind of Lion's Eye Diamond type shenanigans. What is this? A Chalice the Void where X equals 1. Do I care about a Chalice the Void where X equals 1? I don't think that's what we're fighting over here. We already have the Boseiju if we really need to. Okay, so let's... We don't need to jam this Ponder because it's just not going to work into the Chalice. We can use this to pitch to a Force of Will. We don't have a Hedge Maze because we want to be like on the front foot. A Broadside Bombardiers. I don't really want to have to deal with this one. So let's get rid of this pitching a Ponder, I would say. Since that Ponder's not doing us any good anyway. This has to fetch us a Trop, unless we're going to play the other Trop. But we're not going to play the other Trop. We're going to play this Inkmoth so that we have different Infect threats available to us. So this Daze is unlikely to be good against our opponent's deck with all these Soul Lands and Lotus Petals and stuff, but it can pitch to our Force of Will. We will need to find some pump work, but we're not a million miles away from just being able to have a Become Immense and really having a great time. Caves of Chaos Adventurer. So if our opponent's last card in hand is a Spirit Guide, we should be Force of Willing this. I think I'm going to Daze it, because they might have played this last turn. Alright, let's try this. Am I going to get hit by Spirit Guide? We are getting hit by the Spirit Guide. I did say that was a possibility. But we get to attack with an Infect creature. And we get to take the initiative and build ourselves up that way. At least we know what our opponent's hand is now, and it's empty. Something else that we can't cast because of the Chalice. We'll play this Trop. I will turn this into a flyer. Ash for 2 poison. So now we're going to get a Forest out. So there is an argument here to playing this Glistener Elf so that we have more cards in our graveyard for Become Immense. We can't brainstorm anything away anyway. We already played our land this turn, but that's a future consideration that we need to keep in mind. So our opponent bashed us for 5, and they go into the Forge. And we bash them for 2, go into the Forge, and then we bash them for 4. The trap doesn't do anything for us, but we can... I think we are definitely going to the Forge, though. But we'll see how this plays out. Now, I could have avoided this by Force of Willing on the Caves of Chaos Adventurer, but we might be able to leverage the initiative to actually help us win the game, because we have an unblockable threat and a borderline unblockable threat in the Nexus. Are they going to go down the Lost Well, or are they going to go into the Forge? Do I think they can win this straight up race? Even if they Forge this, we can still Dismember it if we find our one-off Dismember. Right, they're going into the Lost Well as a sign of knowing that they're unlikely to be able to win this race. It's kind of the calculation I made when I didn't Force of Will it, thinking that we could probably get away without Force of Willing it. Okay, I'm not looking forward to this Goblin Cavern, because Broadsword Bombardiers is quite the Magic the Gathering card. Right, so we play our Pendelhaven out. Then we will activate the Inkmoth Nexus here. I'm going to attack. I will pump the Blighted Agent. We want to put the Forge counters on the Inkmoth Nexus, because that's a hard opponent for our opponent to deal with. Because if they have something like a Broadsword Bombardier, they can throw stuff at the Agent and kill it. Let's Forge. Let's put it on the Inkmoth. So we have lethal next turn, in theory. Right, here's the Bombardiers. This was the play that I mentioned, the reason why we didn't want to put the thing on the Agent. So we're going to take 7 here. Seasoned Engineer on top. That's a little bit scary for next turn. But they don't have a trap coming. Oh yeah, they can just throw the Caves of Chaos Adventurers, yeah. Forgot about that one. Yeah, unfortunately we didn't quite get there. We could have Force of Willed the Caves of Chaos Adventurer and not allowed the initiative into the game. I think our opponent's draw there still might beat us on that front. We wanted to try and test our opponent's hand. I did mention that was a possibility that could happen. We probably should have just Force of Willed it though. So, Flusterstorm, sorry not Flusterstorm, Hydroblast seems like a pretty handy one here. I'm certainly not opposed to having some Dismember action either. Yes, it's 4 life, but it can make a world of difference. I don't think anything else is required here. Now we could bring in something like Seeds of Innocence to take out like a whole bunch of scary artifacts our opponent assembles. Same deal with the Force of Vigor. I'm just not convinced that's where I want to be. How much do I think our opponent is going to try and kill our creatures? I think we can probably trim a Ponder. And we definitely want our counter magic. Are we looking at taking out the Legolas' quick reflex? This is a piece of removal that we can actually use. I think maybe the Royal Treatment can go here. And then we have a lot of 1-drops. We're definitely shaving a 1-drop of some description. Is it the Hierarch? Probably isn't the Hierarch. I don't think we can get rid of these Berserks or Embiggen. I think it's probably the Vines. It's just quite expensive to leverage. Now our opponent will have some white removal and stuff. Hoping to leverage our counter magic to get around that. Okay, I'll keep this. So we'll start off with a basic forest here. Although that makes our brainstorm a lot worse, doesn't it? Okay, I guess we're going to start off with the Glistener Elf here. And then we'll see what second turn holds for us. Because we can brainstorm here. If we find an Invigorate, we can try and kill our opponent next turn. Chrome Mox. If they have a Chalice here, that is obviously not great for where we're sat. They're just holding this up. So it's probably removal of some description. Right, so we do have a potential win. I'm going to cast a Brainstorm here. A Dismember, a Daze. So I think they have Touch of the Spirit Realm. That's what I believe our opponent has access to right now. Which of these cards do I not really want right now? I don't think the Wasteland is where I want to be. But I quite like the rest of our cards. Double Berserk, probably not. But I quite like to play out this Inkmoth Nexus. Alright, I'll play out the Nexus. I'm not going to try and go all in here while our opponent's got mana up. We can't Daze or touch the Spirit Realm. They can just blink our creature out and then we're left with nothing. And we have the ability to just go lethal whenever we want here. So our opponent taps out for something, we can do that. An Archon of Emeria. That is kind of an interesting one here. We can just dismember this, which I think is acceptable. And this means that our Daze will work on a potential Solitude, so we should be okay here. They'd have to have double Solitude. Goodbye, Archon of Emeria. Do I need to activate this? Probably doesn't hurt, does it? Let's crack this. Might as well get a Trop here. Actually, no, we'll get the Forest, just in case there's some sort of Blood Moon shenanigans. They do manage to wriggle their way out of it. Alright, there's a Solitude. There's a 10-5 Infect guy. Alright, so we got there. I like how we sideboarded. I don't really want to change anything, although on the draw, I'm more inclined to want stuff that's good against Chalice. Am I willing to pitch 2 cards to do it? Am I willing to wait until I can cast the Seeds of Innocence? Both of those are kind of sketchy prospects. If our opponent's going heavy into the removal plan, then I like the quick reflexes. The Daze obviously gets worse on the draw, so maybe we'll board these out. Do I want a Force of Vigor? I guess we could have one of each and split the difference. That's always the worst way of doing things, isn't it? But I think that's probably acceptable enough. Alright, we'll try it like this. Now, our opponent's definitely going to have a glut of mana available to them. Okay. It's not really where I want to be. It's very, very cold to a Chalice on 1. If that's all our opponent's got, then we can try and ride the Nexus. There's the Ancient Tomb. Here's a Chalice. Nope, it's Fable. They pitched a Spirit Guide. That's more reasonable for us. So, I think we are playing out the Glistener Elf rather than the Noble Hierarch. That does give us access to more green mana next turn if we play the Hierarch out. But this will make our opponent change the way they're playing the game because they have to respect the Glistener Elf, potentially killing them on turn 2. And we could always just draw into Invigorate and be able to go for it if that's a thing we need to do. Cavern of Souls, Naming Goblin. Alright, we're probably going to see Bombardiers here. And that might be the end of the game for us, to be honest. Because as long as they have treasure they can keep making, it's going to be very hard for us to keep threats on board. The Inkmoth Nexus we can keep on board, but it's not spectacular for us. And Invigorate can help if our opponent doesn't have any like super scary follow-ups. I could try and block this and save some damage. This is going to get killed anyway. Would I like them to use their treasure token to kill our infect creature? I think so. Become immense. Okay, that encourages me to play out more things that need to get killed. I think we'll play out the Hierarch. So we need to get more stuff in our graveyard, really. Because if we can find enough green mana, then we can become immense, Berserk, and win the game on something like an Inkmoth Nexus. I'm expecting this Hierarch to die, and then next turn when they start copying things, a Reflection of Kiki Jiki, it's probably lights out for us. Also, Bombardiers is quite the Magic the Gathering card. Right, here comes a treasure. Treasure going to get thrown at a Hierarch. Yep, we take 4. Next turn that accelerates quite a bunch. Oh no, they got another follow-up. A Chalice for 1. Yep, that shuts down our Berserk line. A Misty Rainforest. Right, let's have an Inkmoth Nexus. I haven't done the math to see if we're dead next turn. We might well be already. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we don't have enough for this. So we can take additional damage by... Actually, no, we can't Berserk anything here, can we? So what we're going to do is we're going to cast a Glistener Elf to put another card in our graveyard. Yep, so this is 4 cards in the graveyard now. 5, 6. So we have enough mana. If we draw into... if we draw into a Invigorate, we can win next turn. I'm not sure if we're dead this turn, though. So this is what? 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, we are just dead this turn if our opponent clicks the right things in the right way. So here comes a treasure. And then just throw... Okay, I could have thrown the spare Bombardiers, but yeah. So in the first game, we went for a Daze and we could have gone for Force, and that would have stopped them getting the initiative. However, the initiative isn't actually what beat us that game. It was the Broadside Bombardiers. They're just clearing out our creature. And we did get them like halfway there, but our opponent would have had a lot less infect because we wouldn't have had the extra counters on our thing. So it's an interesting one. I think it probably is better for us if we do Force of Will that one. And did mention that as a potential thing that could happen. I was just getting a little bit greedy and hoping that we could have the Daze and also have the Force of Will down the stretch by drawing a blue card. Which, you know, if we did draw another blue card so we could stop, like, whatever the next problem was, then that might have actually worked out really well. All right, let's go to round 2. So we're on the play here. We are lacking an infect creature, but we have a Brainstorm that can hopefully find one, and we've got a lot of juice to go with it. I think this is an acceptable keep. We probably lead out on the Hierarch, then we can do Brainstorm things on turn 2. This gets us ahead of Wastelands, does a whole bunch of good work for us. Now, if we have to fire off our Brainstorm as a pitch card into the Force of Will, then so be it. I'd rather have the ability to Brainstorm my way out of this one, though. A Tundra. Okay, so we could be... Oh, okay. Ether Vial. I don't think that's where we're going to be trying to fight on this game. So this could be like Esper Vial. Right, so we found the infect threat that we were looking for. Now means we don't need this Brainstorm necessarily. We could Brainstorm now, but we might not have a blue card. So we'd be looking for blue card and something else. So I think the correct play here is to play the Blighted Agent around a Daze, then hold up the Royal Treatment via the Noble Hierarch. We could go and get 1 damage in, but let's face it, 1 damage with our deck is borderline irrelevant. This way we have a Royal Treatment, we have the Invigorate if we need to, and we also have the Force of Will. So we can play our whole hand out if our opponent does some sneaky business. Right, it does feel Esper Vial over there. And Orcish Bowmasters. Right, so they're going to ping down our Blighted Agent, and then we are going to put a Royal Roll on it, a Royal Treatment. I will Force of Will to protect this. This will stop our opponent from getting a guy as well. Opponent's got 5 cards in hand. These Esper Vial decks tend not to play Daze, it's just the Force of Wills. So I'm pretty happy to fight, expecting this to get through. But they do have things like Source of Plowshares we have to worry about too. There is a Force of Will, pitching a Psychic Frog. Alright, I am committed to stopping this from happening. Alright, so this makes it harder for our opponent to engage with this because they have to shoot it for a lot more. Because it's the ward, so it's going to double a lot of their removal spells. Can we just win the game? So this will attack for 4. This is 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's close to lethal, but not quite. So we're not going to fire off this Invigorate because we might be able to use that to prevent our creature from dying to like a damage-based removal spell. Unlike our opponent's going to be able to have much damage removal aside from the Bowmasters. But getting that extra 4 poison in here I don't think matters as much as being able to have a lethal swing when the time is right. Because if they kill our creature with like a plow or something, then the next creature we have we can at least save from a Bowmasters by using the Invigorate. Right, we're getting jabbed for 1 by the Bowmasters, not a surprise. What have you got for us over there? Okay, we're going to attack with our Blighted Agent. Our opponent's got enough mana that I don't really want to be invigorating on this one. So if we invigorate and they kill it, that's annoying for us. Whereas this way we just have lethal next turn. I will play out a Glistener Elf though, so we have an additional threat if they do manage to get rid of our Blighted Agent. And the Blighted Agent is lethal on its own anyway, even without the... Alright, so they're going to Orcish Bowmasters our Glistener Elf. Do I care enough about that? I don't think so. We could save that using the Invigorate, but I think I'm going to hold on to this Invigorate. Because the problem with Glistener Elf is it's very blockable, and our opponent has a lot of stuff. Alright, they've had enough. They know the Blighted Agent's going to get there. Cool. We probably could have won with an Invigorate if we'd have known earlier, which is... Yes. Our opponent has a lot of ways of interacting with us that is creature-based. So I think things like Dismember are probably going to be handy here. Flusterstorm, unlikely to be that good. Veil of Summer is like a weird one, because we can protect our creature with a Veil of Summer against like an Orcish Bowmasters, which I think is probably enough that we play the Veil. It also helps us force through some of our cool stuff. So I'm really not big into the old Vines of Vastwood, if I'm perfectly honest. We could board out the Wasteland here. We're not really trying to attack our opponent with Wasteland. So the problem with Vines of Vastwood is it costs green. That's quite a committal for us. And if we're protecting, like, we have better stuff for the protection anyway. But the +4/+4 is nice. We'll see how this feels. You can always switch it up again in game 3. Our Daze isn't on with this hand. And we do need our Noble Hierarch to make it around the table, which isn't that likely if our opponent's got some Orcish Bowmaster action, because they're on the play. Which means the sensible thing here is to mulligan this one. So I think we're going to mulligan this one because we don't have access to the blue. This is okay. We'll keep this, and we're probably going to get rid of this Force, I think. Because we definitely want to use this Ponder, so we're not going to have the tools to leverage a Force of Will here. So we do need to find some other pieces. We got some good chip damage with the Inkmoth Nexus though. But we are probably casting this Ponder on turn 1, I would imagine. Blighted Agent, don't mind if I do. So we want to get our Ponder out of the way before our opponent has Bowmaster mana. How do I feel about this selection of cards? Quite like the Glistener Elf. And the quick reflexes doesn't hurt either. Next turn we can play Glistener Elf holding up Pendelhaven, which is enough to stop the Bowmasters from doing anything to it. A Brainstorm from our opponent. There's a Wasteland. Interesting they're going straight after our Trop there. That suggests to me they might have a follow-up. Do I want to play this Glistener Elf into what is quite obviously a Swords to Plowshares? I don't think I do, which means we're playing out the Inkmoth Nexus, I think. This way, if they have a Wasteland, they're at least not killing our only green mana source. We know the top card of our library is a Brainstorm. Psychic Frog. Our opponent has enough cards our Dismember will do nothing against this frog, which is unfortunate. Like, we'll just make our opponent discard cards is all the Dismember does, which is not great. They can jump this as well. So I guess we are playing out this Glistener Elf. We get a fresh draw next turn. Yeah, this Psychic Frog is already going to be problematic. Now, Infect does deal damage in -1 counters, so it will strip off the counters from the frog, which maybe means our Dismember can work. But our opponent's just going to start attacking us, and they're going to be drawing additional cards every turn, and we're just going to start falling further and further behind. It's Psychic Frog's format, and we're just playing in it. Alright, it's flying. In it comes. Prismatic Ending. It's unfortunate. Can't do much about it. Yeah, our opponent's Wasteland was pretty good. I'm surprised they didn't hold it for the purposes of taking out an Inkmoth Nexus down the line. But it worked out okay for them. I'm going to play the Blighted Agent because we need to get something on board because our opponent is running away with this game with every turn cycle that goes. That is the problem with Psychic Frog. Because if you don't answer immediately, you start falling behind. Even if you answer on the second turn. I think this is worth giving it hexproof. Let's see if we can get a Royal Roll token. Right, our opponent's got a Force. So, we've got 2 for 1 there. We do have the Inkmoth Nexus. And we can start chipping away. Or we can try and Brainstorm into some more action, depending on what our opponent's got over there. But I imagine they're going to play a second land here. Or sorry, a third land, so they're going to have 2 land up. And it's not Orcish Bowmaster mana though, so we don't have to worry about them pinging our Nexus down. So we have a choice with how we use our Brainstorm. Right, I quite like the Boseiju here actually. This allows us to activate the Inkmoth Nexus and still pump it with the Pendelhaven. Now I could put a bunch of -1/-1 counters on this thing. Let's try this. Let's pump our Inkmoth Nexus. Is it worth me putting -1/-1 counters on this? Or do I want to try and counterspell? I think I would be better off trying to counterspell a plow or something. Alright, we just got 2 points in. Okay. So what we can do... Okay, so we got Path to Exile. Alright, I'm going to save our creature here. This untaps it. Then we tap it to add mana. We put 2 -1/-1 counters on this Psychic Frog. What would you like to do about that? This will now play into our Dismember. So I'm going to put 1 counter on that. We want them to put as many counters as possible. So they've got 2 counters on their frog. So if we Dismember this now, it won't be saved. Oh my god. This might be the first time I've ever killed a Psychic Frog with a Dismember, you know. So now the Path to Exile will fizzle because our creature has hexproof. And then they'll just untap, play a Wasteland, kill our Inkmoth Nexus. And then that'll make me sad. A Baleful Strix. That is a pretty good one to have. The old Death Touch flyer into our Inkmoth Nexus. At least they don't have Bowmaster's mana showing, so we can try and fire off a Brainstorm. Baleful Strix is the reason to play Esperfine, in my opinion. It's a cool card. Alright. Let's Brainstorm. No thank you. Guess we put these 2 back for now. This. Now, are we just brainstorming for 1 card here? Considering that we can't make any progress on this board, I think we have to. And our opponent definitely has the long game here. Their deck is all about additional value. Okay. This is what I wanted to see. A little bit worried about this quick reflexes. Because we don't get to play all of the things right now anyway. Okay. I guess we're just passing here. So we can use the reflexes to save our creature and also machine gun down this Baleful Strix. But we need, you know, ways of actually pumping our creatures. That's what we're missing here. A White Orchid Phantom. This is going to shuffle off the top card of our library, isn't it? So I'm going to take out our Inkmoth Nexus here. That is unfortunate. So we wanted to shuffle off the Misty Rainforest anyway. So we kind of having the Legolas' quick reflexes collateral damage on top of the rest of it. Like we could have left it on top and just had the Blighted Agent plus the quick reflexes. That might have been okay, but then we'd have to have another dead draw immediately afterwards. So let's fire in a Blighted Agent here. We can't save it from a Swords to Plowshares. So this is a creature, human, Phyrexian, rogue. So we'll get +4/+4 off this Embiggen. So we can deal them 4, 5, 6 poison. I would like to have some kind of protection spell here though. The fact that they are just attacking and not hiding out the Baleful Strix, not that they can block anyway, I suppose, means they don't have anything like a Dress Down, which I wouldn't expect to see in our opponent's deck. Alright, so we're going to grow our creature so we gain an additional point of life. Charming Prince. So now they can blink the White Orchid Phantom and take out our Pendelhaven, or they can start working in our Tropical Islands. This is not quite a lock, but it's going to get bad for us. They'd probably have something like a Soul Herder they can dig out of their deck at some point, and then they just get to blink the Land Destruction guy every turn. What are we losing? The Pendelhaven. Okay, that's obviously annoying, but I can live with it for now. But we are falling further and further behind. I did say that our opponent's deck is going to win the long game. Okay, let's play a Noble Hierarch. It's a pump spell of a sort. If we had a Brainstorm in hand, I would be more skeptical about playing that out. But this does represent hardcast Force of Will by having it in play, which might change the way our opponent navigates the game. Alright, over to us. Non-infect creature. We can pump our guy pretty big. Am I attacking for 1 here? It's pretty bad into Dwarkish Bowmasters, but everything is bad into Dwarkish Bowmasters for us. And then we just pass and hold up lots and lots of mana and keep our opponent scared. So this is a creature human druid. So Embiggen is just giant growth. I'm going to grow this with an Invigorate. And Embiggen is usually 4 for 1 mana. And the amount of mana we have, we may as well not let our opponent gain life. Not that it's going to be relevant here, but you never know. Maybe some weird sequence of Berserk happens. So we could block and kill something if we want to. So this is 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we probably have to block something. This flies. We could try and take out the Charming Prince if we want to. Is that worth my pump spell? How are we winning this game? I don't know how we're winning this game. I think we're just losing this one. If our opponent's got any interaction here, we're definitely 100% super dead. We get to take out the Charming Prince, at least. So we get to live another day. How are we going to answer all of these things? Yeah, sure. Okay, so now we're on the play. The Dazes come back in and they look... sorry, we didn't take the Dazes out, did we? We took out the Wasteland. Do I want the Wasteland on the play because it's better on the play? Do I want another Vines of Vastwood? Maybe I do want another Vines of Vastwood instead of a Ponder. Alright, let's try that one out. I still don't think we want the Wasteland. That's certainly a choice if I keep this hand, isn't it? Would love to have a hedge maze in our deck if we were to keep this one, but this is like a long way off. I think we just have to mulligan to be sensible about it here. Okay. I think we're definitely keeping the Brainstorm. I think the Become Immense goes. It's like a later problem. Plague Engineer on Phyrexian is something we're a little bit afraid of. We do get ourselves in a little bit of a spot in terms of what we're fetching with this Misty Rainforest, but I'm going to circumvent that problem for now by playing an Inkmoth Nexus out on turn 1. Our opponent's shown us that they've got Path to Exile as well as Plough, so there's going to be at least 5 like pinpoint removal spells that will always kill our creatures regardless of their size. We're going to have the hexproof stuff. Our opponent mulligan to 5 doesn't hurt us, that's for sure. Right, Inkmoth Nexus, there we are. Tundra into Etherval. Is that somewhere I'm fighting? I don't think it is. I think we fight over the removal spells as best we can. I think this means we are getting a Trop here and playing the Hierarch. So we have 2 sources. This is so bad against Bowmasters though, isn't it? Is the problem. But I guess we can Force of Will the Bowmasters if we have to. They probably save their Bowmasters for the Inkmoth Nexus, because they've got multiple Bowmasters. So let's find out. That says newly controlled. That one doesn't. So we're going to turn this into a guy who attacks. Let's try and get 2 poison in. I'm not going to Brainstorm into a potential Orcish Bowmasters. If our opponent cracks his Marsh Flats, maybe we can. But we have Force of Will and we have Daze. And we've got a reasonable clock and some protection. I don't think we need to go wild here. Maybe we can force out a weird timed Bowmasters from our opponent. by using a Brainstorm and try and snag it with a Daze. A little concerned about this Aether Vial on 2, but I think it's right to hold up our Force of Wills and stuff for all these Path to Exiles and Swords to Plowshares we've already seen from our opponent, rather than trying to like mess with the Aether Vial. Like, it is a nice mana advantage they have now. We're trying to ignore the general cards our opponent has and try and concentrate on the specific ones. So I'm not going to brainstorm into what we're seeing here. We've got Force of Will blue card and we've got Daze, although the Daze is probably going to get pitched to the Force of Will. Right, I'll play out Pendelhaven. I will animate my Inkmoth Nexus. I will pump my Inkmoth Nexus. We have to do this before we attack because Pendelhaven can only target 1/1s. Here comes Aether Vial. Orcish Bowmasters, you say? I am not a fan of Orcish Bowmasters against our Nexus. So let's give it the royal treatment. A Path to Exile. So this is the Force of Will. Are we going to pitch the Daze or are we going to pitch the Brainstorm? I think it's the Brainstorm, because we might still be able to leverage the Daze here. Alright, we're in. So they don't get a Bowmaster guy. And obviously we don't want to cast Brainstorm into the Bowmasters either. So this no longer works though with the Pendelhaven because our creature is bigger, but at least it's alive. A weird little exchange all in all. But we're going to have our opponent up to 5 poison counters. So an Invigorate does it. And now our opponent has to spend more mana to target our creature. Our Daze is more likely to be switched on as well. Although, actually, no, the roll falls off, right? Because it's no longer a creature. Okay. Not the ideal use of that, I suppose. Yeah, definitely some tension with things like the roll treatment when a third of our infect creatures are Inkmoth Nexus. Here comes Aether Vial. Baleful Strix. Yeah, that's really hard for us to beat. We can attack with 2 Inkmoth Nexi, I suppose. And then we can Pendelhaven, the one that gets through. Or we could attack with 1 and let it trade with a Baleful Strix. And then next turn we can attack with 1. I guess we'll see what we draw and then we can hopefully work out a nice path to victory. But our opponent's got a bunch of cards in hand. I'm kind of fearful of what they could be. A Blighted Agent, you say? I don't think we need to go wild with this, do we? Let's just make the Blighted Agent here. And I guess we pass here. I really just want to trade it for the Baleful Strix. Now that we have an unblockable creature, I don't think we need to do the trading just yet. Pendelhaven saves it from Bowmasters. Our opponent is not big on the clock front. It's just kind of trying to control the game with lots of bodies that have good enters the battlefield effects. So we're ending up with a whole bunch of card advantage. I decided not to use the Aether Vial. Teferi Time Raveler. How do I feel about Teferi Time Raveler? Not a big fan of this one. Let's say no to this. This can just keep our Blighted Agent under wraps, so it never actually gets to attack. If our opponent has a Bowmaster off this Aether Vial, we can't use our Pendelhaven, unless we're using it in response to the Exalted trigger, after our opponent Bowmasters us. So I imagine the Strixes hold it back. Yep. A Blighted Agent. I'll play out my Tropical Island. And we'll go to attacks. I would like to put 2 poison into you, please. So we're not going to use a Pendelhaven unless our opponent tries to Bowmaster in response to the Exalted trigger here. I think it is correct here to play out another Blighted Agent. These decks tend not to run any mass removal because they're a creature deck. And this just gives us multiple threats to dodge spot removal. Now, obviously, they're going to try and spot removal a... Oh, no, what is this? Psychic Frog. Okay, so yeah, obviously, they're going to try and spot removal our creature when they attack, but we'll see. This is worse versus a Plague Carrier. Plague Engineer, that's the one. It's a carrier creature type for some reason. But yeah, that would be awkward for us. A Wasteland, that can take out our Pendelhaven. I'll be pretty solid here. I guess in response, we would like to pump our Blighted Agent. Blighted Agent can still block, even though it can't be blocked. So maybe this dissuades an attack from something. Goodbye, Pendelhaven. What we can do is just fire up all our infect things and just send them all. And our opponent can't block them all if they want to attack with the Psychic Frog. Quite a lot been going on in this matchup. Been an interesting one. Alright, so the Psychic Frog is coming in. Which means we might be able to crash with everything and win the game. But if our opponent is making this attack, that means that's probably not going to work. Because they would have just left the frog back and then it can block one of the Nexi. So we've got a weird choice about playing around removal or playing around extra blockers. There's a lot of stuff we have to work out here. Our opponent has a spot removal, we attack with a Blighted Agent. It gets pumped, then they kill it, and then we don't get anywhere. And Invigorate. Okay, I think that makes life a little easier. Let's animate this. Now our opponent has to have 2 things here. Send in the clouds. So we don't have to do anything here. Our opponent makes 1 block. This is lethal damage if they have nothing. Alright, what are they doing with this? Another Bowmaster? It is another Bowmaster. What would you like to ping? I'd like to ping our Blighted Agent. Let's pump it and see if you've got another one. Even if this goes wrong for us, we still have Lethal Infect potentially next turn off of the Inkmoth and Blighted Agent. Opponent's got 2 cards. They need to have another thing. Alright, we got there. Whew. That was a really good match with lots of cool interaction back and forth, working out what we're playing around and stuff like that. So, yeah, pretty happy about that one. We are on the board. Let's go to round 3. Oh, yeah. This hand seems pretty tasty to me. We have a choice about what land we're getting. Are we just getting a basic forest to play on, or are we just going to get Trop? Our opponent could be running something like Back to Basics, so I'm inclined to go and get a Trop here. Not a Trop, a forest first. This does mean we can be Wastelanded off, but I think that's not going to be as important as avoiding Back to Basics style stuff. Right, we have a Glistener Elf. We can scale it up and bash for 6 if we want to. We could even just go scale it up Berserk. Enjoy. Yeah, our opponent is just plowing immediately, but we do have another threat. Are we supposed to slow roll this threat so we can protect with the Vines of Vastwood? I think possibly we are, given the nature of the matchup. So next turn we play out our Misty Rainforest. Yeah, so this is one of these Tune the Narrative control decks. I guess we should have played the Misty Rainforest so that we can fetch potentially around a Stifle, because our opponent might be playing a Dreadnought deck. That isn't what's happened, but it's a possibility that we have avoided. Alright, we'll get this. We'll play our little friend. I'm imagining this matchup is going to be pretty miserable. Our opponent's deck is just removal. A Force of Will. Okay. Yeah, so our opponent's deck is pretty much just removal and card advantage, and then it's got like 3 cards that win the game. So it's going to be very hard for us to wiggle our way through this one. I do like the deck our opponent's playing. We played the blue-white version. This is the splash build. So I'm going to put the plow on top. Yep, and just have that in the bank. Alright, it's time to brainstorm. It's time to put these lands back. Okay, so we have some useful protection. We can wasteland away our opponent's only white source when we get towards making a creature. We could also... Okay, we don't get to do that anymore. I was going to say we could also get rid of the red source. They can't force their Lingus, but now they can always do whichever one they want now because they have a Scalding Tarn. If they fetch with a Scalding Tarn, we can see what they get, and maybe our wasteland becomes live again. But I don't think they're going to fetch with a Scalding Tarn unless they're doing Brainstorm action. Opponent's just going draw go over there. Pendelhaven. I would like to have that in play. We have plenty of mana. If we can find a threat, we might be able to win the game. Inkmoth Nexus is probably our better threat here because they can't answer it with any sorcery speed removal like Wrath of the Skies. And Terminus is a thing they have to do on our turn to kill it. I'm not expecting this Daze to actually pay us off unless it's going to be a blue card later on. Oh, we can pump a creature so good. We can pump it all the way to the moon, but we cannot find a creature. And our opponent is going to be dramatically incentivized to make sure that we don't have one of those. 6 cards in our opponent's hand. Do we keep this for Brainstorm? No, we have 1,000,000 cards in hand. And the more mana we have, the more protection spells we get to cast. I think if we draw an Inkmoth Nexus, we have a good shot at being able to win this game because we have the Legolas' Quick Reflex, which is just like GG's to your target removal. But our opponent could find a threat at some point, and their threats tend to close the game very quickly, like Forthy or Lingus, or Entreat the Angels. Jason Mind Sculptor, not so much, but they can just make sure that we never ever get a threat. Alright, we have a threat. A Snapcaster Mage. I'm going to tune the narrative here, or are they just going to get a Brainstorm going? Sure. If they Brainstorm and then try and hit our creature, we can get a little bit of joy with this Tropical Island. So we know they have a plow in hand, so we're probably going to try and use the Vines of Vastwood to protect ourselves. And then on our turn, we can use the Quick Reflexes. So they might just have a sorcery speed removal spell here. This could just be a Terminus. I'm suspecting a Wrath of the Sky. Okay, let's try and protect our creature here. Force of Vigor. We know our opponent has a Swords to Plowshares. How do we get around this? We could... Yeah, I think what we do is we let this resolve, and then we Daze the Prismatic Ending, then they pay... No, we have to Daze this. So we float a green, we Daze this, then they pay... And then, if we Legolas as Quick Reflexes, they just kill it on their turn, right? Yeah, we don't have a good solution. If we'd have Wastelanded earlier on, they would have floated. Yeah, that's tough. We need the Inkmoth Nexus, really. The Inkmoth Nexus is fine because they can't really interact with it until it's a creature, and then it's only a creature when we're ready to kill them. Okay, let's play this Hierarch. I will leave this land in hand. It helps us if we draw a Brainstorm. We stripped out some of our opponent's resources there. Snapcast is not a threat we have to really respect. Another quick Reflexes. So this is 6. Plus 6 is 12. Then we Berserk it. Is that really what I'm doing here? It could be. I think we're okay with that. Our opponent doesn't know the top of their library. Okay, let's scale this up. Let's allow it to become immense. Then let's Berserk it. And Legolas's quick Reflexes always does the work here. Split second. Eat it. Enjoy my 24 power trampler. And if we have to, we can untap it and tap it to kill a blocker. A Force of Will targeting the Berserk. That is interesting, isn't it? Let's attack. Ping this. Am I wastelanding our opponent's Meticulous Archive? I'm kind of tempted, because then they only have 1 white mana to work with unless they crack the fetch. I think we'll do that in our opponent's turn, ideally. Let's see what they fetch here. I'm guessing it's going to be a white source. This is a Brain Surge. Sure. We were so close to having it there. A Terminus, you say? Well, goodbye, Noble Hierarch. Has quite a lot of our juice that we've wasted. Okay. So our opponent's on 2. And now we're going to draw all the poison creatures. Because that's just how this game works sometimes. A Daze. That's not really the one. Do you want to take our opponent off red so they can't 4th Theolingus? I think that's kind of where I'm at now. Now, they might not be running 4th Theolingus. It might just be for Pyroblasts. But if it is a 4th Theolingus they're up to, then sure. And by taking it out, then it means they have less mana for a potential Entreat the Angels. Force of Will that we can hard cast. It's not the worst. Certainly not the best either, but I'll take it. And fetch lands become increasingly difficult for our opponent given their life total. An Inkmoth Nexus. It's a start. We can Nexus, we can Pendelhaven it, and bash, then turn after we can Pendelhaven, scale up. Maybe we get there. That's a Brainstorm. So they now can just go get a Meticulous, sorry, not Meticulous Archive, a Mystic Sanctuary and put back any of their cool spells on top. Like a Terminus, for example. Let's animate the Nexus. Let's pump the Nexus. Let's attack for 2. I don't think our opponent cares about this that much. They have removal, they still fire it off, I think, but I don't think this is the thing they're that bothered by. Is this a Brain Surge, is it? So there's a Terminus on top of our opponent's library. That's what this is saying. We could just Force of Will this. If we Daze it, that doesn't really help us very much. Alright, I like Force of Will in this. If we force our opponent to play with targeted removal, we can beat that with Scale Up and Legolas' quick Reflexes on our turn. Because this is setting up the Terminus they had. Right, we'll save our creature. Unfortunately, this is a sorcery. We're doing our darndest here against this deck that is doing nothing but trying to kill all of our poor little creatures. Our poor, defenseless, innocent, infect creatures. We have lethal, but we don't have any protection left. This is a matchup where I'd love to have just nothing but quick Reflexes as our protection spells. Alright, our opponent's on 1, which is importantly not 0. This is 4th Theolingus, holding up 2 mana. Nope, holding up 1 mana. It is the 4th Theolingus. So this is my opponent telling me that 2, 4, 6, 8. So if we block one of these, we take 6, and then we take 6. So we could block one here. That leaves us cold to a removal spell right now. But our opponent is probably trying to draw a removal spell here. So I think the plan is to try and... Okay, we didn't draw the removal spell. So what is our plan here? We go animate the Nexus. I believe we can only put our opponent to 7 poison here, right? So we make this a 6-6. We get +1, sorry, 6-4, then it gets +1. We deal them 7 and they kill us on the backswing. I think they have us here. I don't want to show them anything else if I can avoid it. Yeah, that was a good game. So, Flusterstorm feels pretty handy here. Veil of Summer, not such a big deal. Grafdigger's Cage, fine, but not exceptional. They're mainly just putting it on top of their library with Mystic Sanctuary. It stops specifically Snapcaster Mage. That's the thing I care about. Then we just swap out this Dismember for this Flusterstorm. And there's definitely an argument for having something like Force of Vigor in if they're going to be trying to smash us up with a back to basics. But I just don't think that's the the access we want to try and fight this one on. We could also get really fruity with it and bring in a Surgical Extraction and try and hit our opponent's Swords to Plowshares or something, or just use it to check that the coast is clear. I don't think I like that enough to try it. Although maybe I like it more than a Wasteland, although a Wasteland can maybe keep our opponent off of that 1 white mana. So I think we're just going to go in with the 1 swap with the Dismember for the Fluster. We don't have an Infect creature. We don't have a way to find an Infect creature. Any Infect creature we do find is pretty good, but I think we have to mulligan this. Well, we're not keeping a no-lander, so this is going back, and we're going to be on the old 5 cards. Clearly what we need is more Infect creatures. Print some more Infect creatures. Let's mulligan this. Alright, this is the best of the bunch so far. So we can just try and overload with threats and just say no to Force of Will. And I guess we say no to 1 Blighted Agent. Right, so we'll play out our Hierarch here. We can Blighted Agent, try and get some damage in there. Well, now our opponent knows what they're playing against, and they've had a little bit of sideboard action. It's going to be very difficult for us to win this one. I gave it a good fight first time around. It does get harder. So, do I hold up a protection spell with our Noble Hierarch? Right, they're Force of Willingness, which suggests to me that they don't have the most amount of removal in hand. Let's bash for 1. Our opponent kept a 1-lander. Curious. I will attack for 1. Our opponent is F6'd over there. At least I thought they were. We have lethal next turn if our opponent has nothing. That's a Ponder. Don't find a white source. Or find like a Meticulous Archive. That would be good. They shuffle their library. Play the Scalding Tarn. That's not the one we wanted to see. Legacy Quick Reflexes? No. Right, Noble Hierarch. Let's bash here. Can I get 3 poison through? We can. Okay. Right, our opponent's hitting some land drops now. So next turn, 1 Invigorate is lethal. They shuffled their library off that Ponder. I would like to cast a Brainstorm and see if we can find any sort of protection here. Did not find any sort of protection. Put back this, and then we can cast a Ponder. I don't hate that. Daze is kind of protection. Is it good enough protection? Our opponent will be able to pay around a Daze quite easy. I think this is in any order in shuffle. Force of Will isn't the one either. Let's hope that our opponent is relying on counter magic rather than removal here. I suspect they kept counter spell plus a bunch of removal and cantrips. Force of Negation, that's fine. That's why we kept the second one of these. Alright, we're about to get rumbled here. I think this genuinely gets worse for us as the game goes on, so we need to try and get in underneath them a little bit before we let them get set up. Volcanic Island, this is going to be a cantrip, isn't it? A Flusterstorm. Storm count is 6, so I think we can safely say that that's not going to... We do get 3 poison in though. And no removal is interesting. They might be playing around this 1 forest we've got held up. Are we going to get Supreme Verdict? Could be. That would suck. It could just be Wrath of the Skies, which would be the same deal for us, really. Wrath of the Skies. Sure. Okay, we're back to this game, are we? Wooded Foothills. We're going to leave this in hand for now. More cards to Brainstorm away. Represent Force of Will blue card. Not that our opponents really going to care that much about that. They don't care about winning the game. Because they will eventually do that. So they're probably getting a Ponder back here. Yep, there it is. Royal Treatment. For a minute I thought that was a creature we could play. But no. There's a Ponder. They did not shuffle. That's bad news. Alright. Over to our opponents. If we draw another land, we're definitely playing one of these out. But we got 2 cards that we're happy to put back with a Brainstorm. Although we're going to want to have 1 to fetch with anyway. So we may as well play 1 out, I suppose. Embiggen. We can make a big creature. But we just need a creature. Where is our Dryad Arbor with Infect? That's what I want to know. That would be great. Scale up. Or like an island you could fetch that's a 0-1 with Infect. That would be good. That would be a cool design. Probably a bit too good. But I would like it still. A Blighted Agent. What is the chance that our Blighted Agent survives? We have 1 piece of protection. Our opponent has got 4 cards in hand. I'm going to play this out so we have more mana to play around stuff. Okay, Blighted Agent. You got to be good. And pop it end of turn. A Swords to Plowshares. Well, I don't think we have the most amount of choice here. Let us give it the royal treatment. A Flusterstorm. Storm count is 4. That is many. We're slowly working through our opponent's things. We're gaining an almighty 1 life there. Just Jace the Mind Sculptor? No, just a cheeky draw 3. Yeah, our opponent's deck full of removal was just a little bit too good against what we're trying to accomplish here. It should also be noted that Scale Up and Embiggen isn't the best combo you've ever seen, because it makes it a worm creature. So it loses some types. But it's obviously very good with the Invigorate, which is why we're running 2 Scale Ups and only 1 Embiggen. So from next turn we can hardcast the Force of Will, so maybe we can interrupt our opponent's win condition when they get there. But if they just slam down something spooky like a big 4th Earlingus now, then that's just a game over. We got nothing. Terminus, yeah, sure. Our Noble Hierarch's not doing anything anyway. It's unlikely to do the full 21. It's certainly possible. We've got no Berserks. Alright, this feels like a 4th Earlingus. Okay, so this game is going to end relatively quickly now. We got 2 draw steps before it's over. Right, they're going to keep 1 creature around. So we could... the crop rotation that's in the deck also acts as another copy of a creature, but you don't really want that. You want that in removal heavy matchups, not in matchups where your opponent's got counter spells and removal, because obviously crop rotating away a land doesn't feel the greatest. But maybe it would have been okay here. Maybe it would have given us some extra utility, just having 1 extra creature in our deck. Because back in the day, they used to run the crop rotations in about as a 3 of, I think, in the Infect decks. Our opponents decided to take this game a bit slower and more cautiously, which is totally fine. Like, we could counterspell that, but it's not really getting us anywhere. We need to hope that they're just drawing stuff that isn't going to interact with the creature that we maybe draw. It's just lights out territory here, I think. We're not going to make it here. Let's concede this one and move to round 4. We're having a bit of a rough time this league, but let's see if we can pick it up in the back end. No lands for this opening hand, so we're going to send it back. Okay, I can live with this one. What are we throwing back? Is it the Berserk or is it the second land? It's probably the Berserk. I want to keep this. This is like a pretty quick clock. We could throw back the second land. Go on then. Let's live life dangerously. This is a basic that we can play on. And we don't need to cast a Brainstorm because this is just our blue card right now. So we will just begin the game with a Glistener Elf. And then we can play a Hierarch next turn. And just start going to town. Try and get the clocking done as quick as we can. Scalding Tarn. That's definitely a land that can produce some removal this turn. Rather than try and win the game this turn with Invigorate Berserk, I'm going to play it slightly slower, given our opponent's open mana. I'd rather have the extra mana to play around things like Daze. So next turn we can Invigorate Berserk with Force of Will backup playing around Daze. We're going to see a Surveil land here, or they're going to have a removal spell. It's a Surveil land. So our opponent could be playing like a tempo deck. They could be playing a combo deck. Demigod of Revenge. Our opponent's playing some cool stuff. Oh, okay. I think this is... Our opponent is the person who plays like the Demigod of Revenge decks all the time. I think we played their deck on the channel a while back and it was really fun. Had a bit of a hard time with it, but it's pretty cool. We have a Wasteland. Do you want a Wasteland now and see if that does anything? Or do you want to have multiple paying around stuff? Right, let's try this one out. Let's try and Berserk our creature, shall we? A Force of Will. Do I care about this Force of Will enough? I think so, because if we just get to do this, we win the game. I don't believe our opponent's deck's going to have a lot of removal in if they're doing Demigod of Revenge stuff. Alright, I was correct. So, I would like this Grafdigger's Cage to stop Demigod of Revenge coming out. The Bojuka Bog is reasonable. The crop rotation therefore becomes reasonable. Although, are we better off just having some Surgicals? That looks pretty good. I like the Fluster here. Our opponent's playing a bunch of spells to make stuff happen. They're like a Storm combo-y style deck, as well as the other bits they're doing. Hydroblast is okay. It stops the Seething Song. Like, these are the tools that are interesting. I don't think we need a Dismember. I don't think we need a Wasteland. I'm not convinced they're going to be targeting our creatures enough to make Legolas's quick reflexes work. The other ones do at least pump our creatures, so that's reasonable. Counter Magic, good. Are we going to have time to ponder in this matchup? Maybe, maybe not. And that still leaves us trying to find a couple more pieces if we want to have all of this. Which probably means we don't have the Hydroblasts. Are Hydroblast better than Daze? Maybe they're better than Daze on the draw. Seething Song, when I played our opponent's deck, felt like a really key part of what you needed to do to win the game. Okay, we can keep this. We can peck away for a little bit. We've got some protection for our opponent's combo draws. We got a lot of protection. And eventually we'll win the game. That's the plan, at least. I think we're just going to go and fetch a land here, rather than play out the Nexus and try and attack from turn 2. Because if we can use a Fluster this cycle, that would be pretty good. Obviously, it has diminishing returns sometimes later on. But our opponent is running storm spells, so we can just stop a load of those from making the difference. Alright, Flusterstorm gets better. Ral Monsoon Sage. Not a big lover of this little one. How would I like to interact with Ral Monsoon Sage? I think I'm going to Force of Will. And I think I'm going to, because we've got the Inkmoth Nexus, I'm going to use the Blighted Agent here. That could be bait. I suspect it isn't, though. Feels bad pitching one of my Infect threats, but it is what it is. I don't think we're firing up the Blighted Agent yet. I want to keep this Flusterstorm. It's our only piece of interaction. Well, we have the Surgical Extraction as well, but I'd like to have the most amount of opportunities to do fun things here. All right, nothing from our opponents. It's back over to us. So this is the turn we get to crack this for a trop and make a Blighted Agent. And then we can just sort of nug away with 2 creatures for a few turns. And hopefully this Surgical and Flusterstorm will do enough to keep our opponent at bay. An Intuition. That's fine because we have a Surgical Extraction. Let's see what they find though. If it's just demigods, we can Surgically Extract them. 3 Seething Songs. So in our opponent's draw step, we are going to... Let's put a stop in our opponent's draw first. Set stop. Right, now we're going to crack this so that we're ahead of it with our mana. So we don't have any awkward things of cracking and not being able to cast our spells. And we're going to hit this Seething Song right now. This is also going to generate some flustering for us. They're going to cast this Seething Song. This is being cast in their draw step. So it has to be an instant, which means our Flusterstorm will hit it. A Manamorphose. Again, that's fine. We can take a peek at what our opponent's working with. Invoke Calamity. Now this is where we're going to target our Flusterstorm. So our opponent have a Flusterstorm to fire back. Alright, our opponent's off it, and that is the end of that match. So we are now 4 rounds in. We are 2-2, so we're heading towards a match for a potential positive record. Let's see if we can stick one on the board. We're on the play for the final round. Not a bad place for us to be. Our hand is pretty good. We've got a little bit of pump, but we have a lot of redundancy with threats, which is quite often the part that is difficult. I am going to lead off on Glistener Elf. This does lead us to some turn 2 kills, depending on what we draw and depending on what our opponent's playing. Right, we're in. There was a little pause, so I wouldn't be surprised if our opponent's playing a blue deck. Cloud Post, okay. So this is just a free roll if we can get there. A Daze. Might come in handy, we'll find out. Let's jam this Noble Hierarch. Let's bash. This is for 2. I will play out this Glistener Elf. Gives us a little bit of redundancy if our opponent has removal. There's a Glimmer Post. You gain that life. It's not going to help. Elvish Spirit Guide. It's going to be a Sowing Mica Spawn. It's the One Ring. We have a response to the One Ring. Let's say no to that one. Because that stops us being able to infect our opponent up next turn. It also gives them a bunch of cards. And things just go awry for us at that point. So we got 4, 5, 6 damage, whichever way we slice it. So I think we're just going to attack with one guy. And then we can deploy the unblockable guy for next turn. And the unblockable guy can attack for lethal next turn with the Invigorate. So we can go tall, we can go wide. You gain some more life with your Glimmer Post. The One Ring. Okay, so our opponent gets another reprieve. What have we got? A tool that is unlikely to be leveraged. Okay, so we can't attack. No, we can attack. We just won't deal damage. And Infect is still damage, so it will get blanked by the One Ring. Alright, our opponent's drawing a bunch more cards. The fact that we're not pressuring their life total means they can just go as deep as they like in the One Ring without any fear. Whereas if we were like a traditional aggro deck, there becomes this weird little juggling where they have to work out a way that they can not die to their own One Ring while getting pressured. Although the Cloud Post deck's normally pretty fine at dealing with that anyway, because it's got a Glimmer Post and all sorts. And One Ring usually finds another one, so it can reset it. Vexing Bauble is interesting, but we can hardcast a Daze. Now, is our Daze going to find any sort of use here? Uncertain. Like, we can hardcast the Invigorate as well. There's a Wasteland. We can still hardcast the Invigorate. We can hardcast the Daze on this turn cycle too. So I think we're okay. If our opponent taps out for something here that we can Daze, that would be the perfect situation. I guess Kozilek's Command is a bit of an issue. Can just smash down our Blighted Agent then. Which then begs the question, are we supposed to play around Kozilek's Command and just attack for 3 poison and give our opponent another turn with the One Ring in play? Doesn't feel like a great idea. I think we just have to go for it. Because otherwise we're going to draw so many cards that we're probably going to be... If we draw something like a Scale Up, that'd be good. Alright, they're casting something here. A Crop Rotation. I think we're going to make them pay an extra 1 for that. The Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale. Yep, that's a good one. You making them pay an extra 1 isn't really going to help them. Suddenly gotten a little tougher. So we'll pay for the Blighted Agent. We won't pay for the Glistener Elf. We will pay for the Hierarch using itself because this is +1 damage a turn. And then the Glistener Elf dies. We can't play this for free because of the Vexing Bauble. Not a big fan of that Blighted Agent either. We get to attack for 2, which is not nothing. So if we'd have drawn any sort of 1 mana pump spell, like an Embiggen or whatever, we had the chance to win that turn, which is why we took the line we did. We can no longer afford to go wide because of the Tabernacle. Yeah, you keep drawing cards on that One Ring. I think I would rather be in our opponent's spot right now. Nothing else from our opponent there. Let's go to our turn, start paying for our little friends. Yes to Blighted Agent, and yes to Noble Hierarch. Can we draw a thing to get us over the line? But if we draw a land next turn, well, we don't even need to draw a land next turn, do we? How useful is holding up a Daze here? I guess we're about to find out. It feels like a Kozilek's Command for 2, sorry. You can make them pay 1 extra. That just taps the Nexus. Yep, there it is. Just feel like Infect is a little bit power crept out of the format these days. Alright. Let's go and get some Trops and play another Blighted Agent. This way, if we draw a land, or if we draw a 1 mana pump spell, we can try and win the game next turn. So that's a lot of draws in our deck that actually get us there. But does it get us there through our opponent drawing 5 cards this turn? Ironvugen. That can certainly allow for some pretty busted plays. Another Vexing Bauble. The first one was good enough. This could just be cracking baubles to draw cards now, which is fine if that's the sort of level our opponent's operating on. Feels like another Kozilek's Command is relatively likely at this stage. Alright, let's keep our creatures. No Tabernacle. You cannot have our creatures. Alright, let's try and win the game. I'm not expecting this to go through, if I'm being perfectly honest. But we'll see. Yep, just getting K commanded. Yep, there it goes. It's just another deck that the longer it gets to do its thing, the more resources it's going to have. Like they're discarding cards every turn because they've got so many and we're down to nothing. I think we have to try and take that option. We could try and like nip away for a little bit there instead. But every time they tap this One Ring, it just feels like we're falling a million miles behind. 8 mana. Alright, so we're just getting Ulamogged right in the heart here. I don't believe we come back from this, so I'm going to concede this and go to game 2. What do we get in the sideboard? Karakas does do some stuff, but I don't think that's where I want to be. I like the crop rotation because they can have things like Tabernacle we want to deal with. Where did that go? Yep, the crop rotation. I would like one of those. I don't think we need a Dismember to clear the way. We just want to kind of go around them. Flusterstorm doesn't feel great here. These cards have text on them. Now we can destroy the baubles. Can't destroy the One Ring though, which is the one we really care about. I guess we're just going in like this. We just got to get in underneath what our opponent's doing and hope it's good enough. Okay. We don't need much for this hand to do enough. Right, let's play our Tropical Island here. We've got Daze available. Next time we can play the Blighted Agent. Urza's Tower. So our opponent is representing potentially 4 mana as early as turn 2, which is a lot. I don't think we're supposed to try and beat that. I think we're supposed to, like, you know, try and disrupt that. I think we're supposed to just push right through with our Blighted Agent and hope that the Blighted Agent plus the Dazes can be enough. If we draw another pump spell, then I think we're okay. We have 4 mana. So this is a Kozilek's Command for 2. Become Immense. Can we do that this turn? So play this one out. If we Embiggen this, if they try to remove it, that will be 1 card, 2 card, 3 card, 4 card, 5, 6. So that will be lethal. So I'm going to try and assume our opponent is going to play into what we're up to. We have to hold priority and put both Dazes on to make this work. But if they don't try and kill it, then that's fine too. They might just take the 5 and then try and kill it post-combat. Oh no, they're going for it here. Here comes the Rude Awakening. Oh, it's a Swords to Plowshares with 2 mana up. That is real awkward. Because they can pay around the Daze. Oh, that's the exact thing we went prepared to deal with. That is a damn shame. Are we supposed to hit this Planar Nexus now? Possibly. Having the exact right thing to deal with us there. Alright, now I think we have to try and slow our opponent down with this Boseiju. If we hit the Nexus, that means that our opponent has multiple cards that aren't going to be keying off of it. Whereas if we hit the Ezra's Tower, they can play a Cloud Post or whatever and start going off. There's the Cloud Post that I just mentioned. Let's put some more cards on our graveyard for Become Immense. I don't think our opponent cares about taking one poison. I think they just take it this turn. The usefulness of our Dazes is certainly falling by the wayside. Oh dear. The One Ring. Can't allow this. Alright. Have they got an Elvish Spirit Guide here to really rub it in? They do. Okay. Our opponent has it all and we are getting absolutely buried. What is it coming to where an Infect deck can't take on a Cloud Post deck? That is the world we're living in right now. So this doesn't do anything. I guess we'll play this out so we can fetch away with a Brainstorm. Our opponent should just run away with this game now. As soon as they find a Planar Nexus, they jump forward in huge amounts of mana. Our opponent's got a crop rotation on the go. This is going to be a Wasteland. And we're going to lose. Oh no, they're just getting more mana. That's even worse. Yeah, okay. I'm happy to press the concede button there. They're terribly mugging us. We had a window. We failed. We got busted up by them cycling mana out. So we finished with a 2-3. We did get some games and some matchups. But we lost pretty decisively overall, I'd say. We had to work quite hard for our wins as well, I'd say. Alright, let's talk about the deck. So, Infect does feel like something that's been power crept out of the format a fair bit. I don't necessarily have the time to put it all together. And it's very easy to take away one part. And there's a lot of things that can hit Infect creatures now because, you know, Orcish Bowmaster exists, which makes Infect's life a lot more difficult. And I would say that so many of the threats that exist in Legacy now are just really good standalone threats. They kind of outclass a lot of what we're doing. Like, yes, we have, you know, this combo type thing. But there's so many creatures hanging around that could just, you know, get in the way of a Glistener Elf and stop you attacking with it. Back in the day, like in 2015-ish, when Infect was really good, you would have a lot of decks that weren't really committing much in the way of creatures to the board. So you could just get your little chips in with your guys. But now there's loads of creature decks out there, whether they're like Ancient Tomb Stompy decks or, you know, Psychic Frog decks, Cradle Control decks. You know, there's so many things putting stuff in the way. So that Blighted Agent is the only one that really has... Well, Blighted Agent and Inkmoth Nexus have a reliable shot of connecting. But the Glistener Elf, not so much, which kind of makes things awkward. I've always wanted to try and play an Infect list with some Plague Stingers in, because that's another evasive threat. And, you know, just more threats in general help. But the quality of the threats in Infect is so low compared to the quality of the removal that can just pick it off like the Bowmasters, which is kind of incidental at this point. It just feels a bit sketchy. And there's so many like X1s floating around as well. Off of like bonus creatures, you know, your bonus Orc Army, your Baleful Strix, which has now come back in the meta because it's good against Psychic Frog. And you've got your Spring Hunt and Tuco, which can then make a bunch of 1/1s and do some blocking. You've got your Guide of Souls, you've got your Ocelot Pride. There's a lot of stuff to get in the way here. And it does feel like we've been power crept out of the format a little bit. Let's talk about some previous lists. So let's have a look at an older Tom Ross deck list. So Tom Ross was like the Infect guy for quite some time. So as you can see, you got your package of 12 creatures that we also have. They've got 19 lands here, but 19, 20 lands. The Wasteland is kind of the flex slot here a little bit. But, you know, the mana base is pretty similar. We've got the Dazes, we've got the Force of Wills like we used to have. We've got a couple of Berserk, we've got the 4 Invigorates. We've got 1 Scale Up, we've got 2 Vines of Vastwood. So, you know, one of the Vines of Vastwood has become a Royal Treatment. And then, you know, your Spell Pierces are now looking like the Legolas' Quick Reflexes, that sort of jam. So, you know, the deck is very similar. There's a few flex slots, whether it's your Oko, Thief of Crowns, and your Piracy Charm. I just pull up a Piracy Charm for you. So Piracy Charm is a 1-mana instant. You get to choose one of these. Target creature gains Iron Walk until end of turn. That can actually help the Glistener Elf push through. Target creature gets +2/-1. If you've already cast a pump spell on your guy, it then gives you the ability to have a little bit more damage going on. So it's kind of a pump spell in blue, which is nice. Also, you can use it to pick off like a Peacekeeper or something like that, which isn't really a thing you see very often. But you know what is in the format? Orcish Bowmasters. You can pick off one of those and then cast your Brainstorm. And then you also got target player discards a card as an option. And it's an instant, so it, you know, you can just hit something in your opponent's draw step, and that's fine. So, you know, Piracy Charm was a pretty cool card back in the day. But going back to this list, you know, it's very similar looking in a lot of ways. And that's kind of the problem. Infect hasn't got a lot of new exciting tools because they're not printing new Infect creatures. So we have to play with the same kind of crappy creatures that we had back in the day. And we haven't got a chance to really improve them. And that is a damn shame in my opinion. I don't think it would hurt to have a little bit more Infect juice. Instead we got Toxic, which is not the same because if you put a pump spell on a Toxic creature, nothing happens. Now maybe there's some weird thing you can do with Double Strike, and then that does work with Toxic stuff, but again, it just doesn't feel like where you want to be anymore. Kind of begs the question, where does this deck sit? Let's just take another quick look at a different deck list. Alright, so here is another Tom Ross deck list. Again, you can see the same features. You got your 12 creatures. You got your 20-ish lands. You know, a lot of the spells we've got here are kind of similar. We've only got 3 of the counter spells here, but we got, you know, 1 crop right in the main, which can help find an Inkmoth Nexus, as well as the Wasteland that we got, or the Pendelhaven, you know, the 2 Berserks, the 4 Invigorate, the Piracy Charm, the classic 4 Brainstorm, 1 Ponder, you know, it's all very similar, which is the problem. Legacy has moved on a lot in the last 9 years, and the Infect deck doesn't really have anything to show for it. What do we get? We got Embiggen. Embiggen is fine, you know, it's a reasonable way of pumping things. It's really nice on an Inkmoth Nexus, pumps pretty big, but it doesn't really fix the fundamental problems. The deck didn't have, like, a lack of pump spells, right? You know, you got your Scale Ups, your Invigorates, your Berserks, your Become Immense. We weren't hurting for pump spells. We were hurting for our creatures being good enough to win us the game, dodge the removal, protect our stuff, whatever. And that's just not the case anymore. And what else have we got since then? It's just the Embiggen, and what, Royal Treatment and Legacy's Quick Reflexes. Let's move these into a little pile. These are the only new additions we've had for this deck in 9 years, which is a long time. I'm pretty sure. Was this 9 years ago? Maybe Scale Up wasn't 9 years ago. Okay, so one of those deck lists I showed you was from 9 years ago, and the other one was from 4 years ago. And as you can see, there was almost no difference between them, like 1 or 2 of the flex slots tweaked, and that was it. So in 9 years, we've had minor changes, and in 4 years, we've had just these cards. And that's just not enough. We need something that hits a bit harder. I think the entire Infect shell probably needs a little bit of a fine-tuning. Maybe we can't afford to be running things like the Dismember as a flex slot and stuff. We just need to have more of our good bits and pieces, right? Maybe we need, you know, more pump spells, more of our let's be able to win early on instead of trying to play a longer protracted game, because so many of the decks are just going to stop that from being a thing that we get to do. So maybe we need to go down on some of our cantrips and try and go up on some pump spells. Maybe we need ways of pushing our Glistener Elf through, like, is it Distortion Strike? I think it's something like that. Or Stroke. It's like a single blue, target creature gets +2/+0 and unblockable, and it's got Rebound. So that can kind of secure you an extra 4 to 6 Infect, depending on, you know, how much you're valuing the body of the Infect. So that could be a thing you could try to help just actually be able to connect with a Glistener Elf or an Inkmoth Nexus through the world of, like, Psychic Frog and Baleful Strix, that sort of jam. Maybe there's a better way to protect our creatures. Like, Legolas' Quick Reflexes was very good, but it wasn't enough against the removal deck. Like, the dedicated removal deck is going to sweep you up. Whereas once upon a time, it felt a little bit easier to do that versus that deck. But that, you know, that deck is a deck where you get to chip away and they don't have creatures in play. But their finishes now are things like Fourth Eolingus, which just, okay, you're drawing extra cards now, you're beating us down, you've got loads of blockers, game over, I guess. So things have changed and we need to change some more with Infect. I've got some ideas of some very out there different takes on Infect. But I think for, like, the classic Glistener Elf Blighted Agent, it's going to take one of the, like, really good Infect players out there to put some time in and work on it and kind of fine-tune the numbers. Like, obviously, I'm not really an Infect player. It's not really my jam. So maybe some of the mulligans we take should be different. Maybe we could be more aggressive with them. There's definitely some options on that one. Sam Dam's Fenris Cloud, you know, they are sort of the big player playing Infect these days. There's not many people making Infect content out there, but they are, and they've just got accepted to the creator program that I'm on as well. So hopefully you'll be seeing some more Infect content from them. So check them out too, and hopefully someone will be able to crack this and kind of fine-tune where to go with the old Infect. I know a lot of people are trying to play white spells in their Infect deck, so that you have things like Swords to Plowshares to fall back on, but we only have a limited amount of flex slots to actually interact with our opponent outside of, our usual counter magic. And I just don't know if we can do that. So maybe I'm going to try something really wild with less of a reliance on blue. Like, obviously, Blighted Agent is really good, though. It just feels like a very tricky deck to navigate with, but also build an optimal list for. And if you've got any ideas, by all means, send them my way. I'm always interested to see how people innovate on archetypes like this. Playing little guys and trying to pump them up like this isn't really my speciality. But I think we did showcase what the deck can do, and also the pitfalls of the deck right now in where Legacy is situated. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope the donor is happy. And if you would like to donate a deck to my channel, you can become a member of my Patreon and do it that way. You can become a member of the very cheap tier on my Patreon and get put into a raffle every month where I give out a free donation deck. Or you can just contact me and we can sort one for you. It all goes to supporting the channel, and I do appreciate it a great deal. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.